Richmond nowadays, I don't know how to feel about it. It's like the strategy is very interesting, but the racing is a bit meh. This race, kind of the same thing. The strategy was very interesting to watch. New contenders up front, but the racing was it just wasn't appealing to the casual eye, in a sense. It was much better than Martinsville, though, I will say that. Anyways, this race was very interesting from a strategic standpoint. In the last race, we saw a lot of drivers do one-stop strategies per stage. Some drivers did two stops. With this race, however, it didn't matter. Everyone did about 2 stops per stage. So the difference in pit strategy, drivers trying out different things, didn't apply with this race at all. But I was surprised by how much the track opened. I mean, we saw in the first race a lot of single file, or 1 lane, maybe 2 lane racing. But in this race, we saw 1, 2, 3 lanes open up, especially later on into a run. We saw the track just open up. You can drive on the inside lane or you can drive on the outside lane, which is kind of like push to pass an IndyCar. On the outside, you get a lot of momentum. You can pass a lot of cars, but you're going to use up your tires a lot more. So it was very interesting, the racing lines that many drivers were choosing throughout the course of a run. But there were some moments. Chastain at the beginning, he led wire to wire from stage 1, and then after that was not a factor, at least for the race leader. There was this very funny moment in stage 2 between Ty Gibbs and Kyle Busch. The current driver of the 18 gets booted by his 19-year-old replacement, or more than likely his 19-year-old replacement and Kyle Busch. They were hitting and bouncing off each other for quite some time, for a good amount of laps, and it was very fun to watch because it's just weird to see that type of battle where 2 drivers that one seems to be going out of the 18 and another one that seemed to be taking your spot is moving you out of the way for position. That, to me, that was one of the funniest things from this race, or one of the most things that catch my eye when I review this race is that moment, because that was pretty funny to watch. There was one driver, though, in stage 2 that did try to do something different. I mentioned that everyone was doing a 2-stop strategy. Stenhouse and Brian Patty were trying to do a 1-stop strategy, staying out for as long as you can while everyone's pitting. You lose at the beginning, but then you pit and get everyone right back. Yeah, that plan didn't work. Stenhouse beached the corner, drove in with way too much speed, washes up, misses the commitment line, and then runs into the side of Martin Truex Jr. Luckily, there was no crash and Truex didn't suffer a tire going down, but that basically killed Stenhouse's strategy and he finished outside the top 20. But in that stage 2 incident, Truex did have a slow pit stop. That means he came out 1 lap down. Joe Logano in stage 2 then took over, and Logano had the best car, it seemed. When it was out, bright sunshine, Logano had the best car. He led over 100 some odd lap. I think 140 laps he led in this race, led the most laps, had the car to beat, it seems. And there was a very good battle, not for position, but you had Truex, like I said, was a lap down, trying to chase down Logano, the leader. Now, Truex, having much fresher tires than Logano, is chasing him down, but can't pass him. But because those two are racing so hard, especially with lap traffic, and considering the fact that Logano's car is not good on the long run, now you're bringing a bunch of other drivers in the mix. You bring Byron into the mix, another driver that's trying to stay on the lead lap. Kyle Larson now running in second place within striking distance, and ahead of them you had Ty Dillon and Ross Chastain that are trying to stay on the lead lap. That battle wasn't the most exciting, but it was pretty interesting just to have an idea of who stacks up where and if Truex, Byron could get back on the lead lap. But like I said, Logano's car was struggling longer into a run that allowed Truex to keep putting pressure on him, and he ended up passing him, getting himself back on the lead lap before the end of stage 2, but Logano did end up winning. And then when stage 3 begins, Ross Chastain, he has gotten into Denny Hamlin, I think 3 or 4 times, gotten into Martin Truex Jr. at Dover. I don't think he's gotten into Christopher Bell, but he got a new victim, and that's Kyle Busch. On a restart, Chastain just dumps Kyle Busch. Entering turns 3 and 4, 3-wide battle. Chastain doesn't intentionally do it, all right? I must say. I said that to kind of just, a bit of a clickbait there, but Chastain, this was more of a racing deal. Chastain entering 3 was in the middle lane. It seemed as though Kyle Busch maybe came down just a little bit, or maybe Chastain just washed up. Regardless, I think it was just more of a racing incident rather than a blatantly obvious situation like what we saw at Gateway or saw at Dover, where Chastain was just being unnecessarily aggressive. This time was just more of a racing incident. And then we had the final round of pit stops begin. That was all said and done. But then around that time, the racetrack got much cooler. It became overcast. No longer was it sunny and shiny. The track temperature got much cooler. And because of that, it completely changed how Logano's car handled. From Logano being the fastest car, or the best car it seemed, to now a driver that couldn't even contend with the leaders. He fell off like a rock compared to racing for a position. Kevin Harvick now, who was in the top 5, he had a really solid car all day long, was just in the top 5 all race long. Now all of a sudden, he is a new race leader. He's able to contend with Logano with ease and pass him with ease. But then you had Chris Buescher, who didn't have a car, at least to us, seemed like to be able to contend for a win. All of a sudden, he is running down those 2 drivers. I mentioned Harvick got past Logano. Buescher ends up getting past Logano. And now Buescher is running down Kevin Harvick. All of us thought this is going to absolutely explode the playoffs, because then we'll have 16 race winners with 2 races to go. A lot of us, including myself, wanted Buescher to win, to absolutely destroy the playoff picture. However, Buescher just used up his tires. He was able to get real close to Harvick, but by the time he got to Harvick, Harvick was just using that veteran mindset, was able to just hold his ground, didn't make any mistakes, and Buescher just kept putting pressure, just kept using up his rear tires, and after a few laps, he was basically no longer able to contend. He started falling off. In the meantime, Christopher Bell started to charge forward. He either reserved his stuff or either had much fresher tires compared to Harvick. He was flying, just absolutely flying, got by Buescher. He was, I think, 2.5 seconds with 5 laps to go. And on the final lap, he was within 0.5 of a second. But luckily for Harvick, it was the final lap. Bell was able to get within 0.3 of Harvick, but Harvick was able to hold him off to win his 60th career Cup Series win, his 2nd win in a row of 2022, one last weekend at Michigan, and his 4th career Richmond win, the first since 2013, 9 years ago, when Harvick was then driving for Richard Childress Racing. That's how long it's been since Harvick went to victory lane. So Harvick wins, Bell in 2nd, Buescher 3rd, another solid run for him. Unfortunately, wasn't able to get the win. Denny Hamlin, he pitted on the final round of pit stops on scuffs. He had no fresh tires, was able to hold on for a 4th place finish. Chase Elliott 5th. Logano falls to 6th place after leading, I believe, like I said, 140 laps, a race high in that event. Truex in 7th place after a day which many thought he could have a possibility, a shot at winning at. Same thing with Aric Almirola, had a real fast car, started 30th and then finishing in 8th. Kyle Busch ends his 8-race winless, or I should say top 10 list streak with a 9th place run. The fact that he was able to rebound from a spin earlier with Chastain, pretty impressive. And Ryan Blaney finishes in 10th. Again, another driver that I thought would run a lot better in this race. Here's some other notables. William Byron in 11th, Cindric in 12th, Bubba Wallace. His top 10 streak ends with a 13th place run. And Kyle Larson in 14th. Was running strong, had a few moments earlier in the race, but that final stage was just nowhere to be a factor. Same thing with Brad Keselowski, started off strong, ends up in 15th. The Dillon brothers 16th, 17th, Chastain and Suarez teammates 18th and 19th, and Bowman in 20th. Briscoe finishes 23rd after Briscoe got caught on fire. Don't know why. We don't know why he caught on fire, but he caught on fire, kind of like Buescher at the Indy Road Course a couple races ago, but able to continue, finishes 23rd. Cole Custer lost power steering, had a whole slew of problems, finishes 26th. Reddick, I don't know what happened with him, but he was just nowhere to be found, finishes 31st. And then Eric Jones, who was involved in that crash with Ross Chastain and Kyle Busch, had to pull out of the race. And Ty Gibbs finishes dead last with an engine failure. Now, unfortunately, with Harvick's win, doesn't change the playoff picture much. However, these drivers on the left-hand side, these 10 drivers, Elliott, Chastain, Byron, Hamlin, Logano, Reddick, Harvick, Larson, Bell, and Kyle Busch, they can sleep the next 2 weeks as they are locked into the playoffs. However, 11th through 15th, Bowman, Suarez, Cindric, Briscoe, and Kurt Busch, well, they still have to charge. They still have to fight for the final 2 races to make sure they stay in the playoffs. Now, the thing is that Bowman, Suarez, Cindric, and Briscoe, they will not fall out of the playoff picture based off of points. The only way they're in jeopardy is if we have a new winner. Kurt Busch, on the other hand, if he can get back to racing at Watkins Glen next weekend, he's going to have to pull on some strong runs these next 2 weeks, because currently, now Ryan Blaney, he is the first and only driver that's currently in based off of points, now plus 26 ahead of Martin Truex Jr., and then Aric Almirola, Eric Jones, Bubba Wallace, Austin Dillon, Chris Buescher, and Justin Haley. They have to win. I mean, minus 214, there's no way you can gain that based off of points. Truex and Blaney are the only drivers that can possibly make it on points if we don't have more than 16 race winners. Again, my thoughts on this race, it's Richmond. It's like it didn't provide the best racing. There were some moments. I will admit there were some moments. The battle between Harvick and Logano was very interesting to watch, and Buescher closing in. Ty Gibbs and Kyle Busch, that was fun to watch. There were some moments, but again, the issue with Richmond is just that it hasn't been entertaining. To the human eye, to the eyes of a normal person, it's not entertaining. Now, if you're into strategy, things like that, this race did provide some of that. The strategy at Richmond is one of the best, I feel like. I love the strategy at Richmond that it provides, but from a racing perspective, it just didn't do much. It was a lot better than April. I will say that. The track was able to spread out. It was a multi-groove racetrack. You could run on the inside, run on the outside. There was a lot of different new contenders that were in and out in each stage. You had Chastain in the first one, then Logano in the second, and then Harvick and Buescher in the third. So every stage had different players up front, which made it very interesting. And strategy played a role in that. But in terms of the actual racing, like what we saw in Michigan, we saw great racing. Richmond, we saw great strategy, but the racing much better than back in the spring, but still wasn't. It was meh. It was meh. So I would give this race maybe a 6 out of 10. The strategy, though, I will say wasn't as good as in April, because in April you had multiple drivers doing completely different things. In this race, virtually everyone was doing a 2-stop strategy in every stage, especially with the final stage. I mean, no one tried something different. Well, Stenhouse did, but he beached it. But racing much better than the spring race, but the strategy, I have to give it back to the first race. But I must say, Kevin Harvick, he went from a guy that many of us thought just to stay in the playoffs. He had a 65 win streak. Just a driver that we all thought that had to fight to get in the playoffs. Now, I mean, a lot of people look at Chase Elliott being the guy to beat. I look at Kevin Harvick. Kevin Harvick and that Ford car, they are clicking at the right time and the worst time for their competition. They're now going into Watkins Glen, Daytona, the final 2 races of the regular season, now with 2 consecutive wins to their belt at completely different racetracks. All I'm saying is this: Elliott may be the points leader, but I keep my eye on that Ford car of Kevin Harvick. They have found something. Him and Rodney Childress, they've had speed, but they've just never been able to just get over that one hurdle to close out races up front. They know how to do that now. That is scary for the competition, but as a fan, that's very exciting to watch. You look at a guy like Chris Buescher. Man, Chris Buescher, I feel so bad for Chris Buescher. I mean, he's had some real solid runs, and we look at next weekend at Watkins Glen, runs really good on the road courses. He's a guy that I would watch out for. Had a strong one again at Richmond, but just wasn't able to close it out. Use up his stuff in the final few laps with Harvick. I'm surprised the Toyotas weren't as strong as I thought they would be. Hamlin was the best driver, but didn't have the stuff to, I think, challenge for the win. Kyle Busch had his own issues. Bell had the fastest car, but again, it was so late in the race. No Toyota drivers, to me, at least seemed like the type of guy that could challenge for the win. Fords dominated, or at least Fords looked the best. Logano ran really strong. Blaney was solid up there in the top 5. Keselowski also was up there up front in the top 5 for a good amount of stage 1. But the Fords really showed up, which is something we haven't seen in some time. Outside of Harvick at Michigan, there was and Blaney and Logano, there were really no other Fords that were in the mix. This time you had virtually all of the Fords, except for Cole Custer. He had his own issues, were very competitive. The Chevrolet drivers, I'm not surprised they didn't do well. Especially Hendrick. Richmond has not been their best track, so I'm not surprised they didn't do well. But Ford stepped it up. But now, next weekend, we're going to Watkins Glen. That, I think, is a real mystery, because we really don't know. Watkins Glen is such a completely different style of road course racing. I look at maybe Trackhouse, they can do something. They've won on the last 2 road courses. They've won on both Coda and Sonoma. Look at a guy like Tyler Reddick that could maybe pull up another win there. Won at Road America and at Indy. So you look at the Chevy drivers as teams that can maybe pull something out. Toyotas could possibly struggle, but I'm watching for that 4 car and that 17 car. I think those 2 drivers are going to be real forces to be reckoned with. One of those 2 next weekend at Watkins Glen. But yeah, again, with this race, I gave it 6, 7 out of 10. Racing was better than in the spring race. Strategy, not that much, but it was Richmond. It was better than I expected. I'll just say that. But thank y'all so much for watching. What did y'all think of this race? Tell me in the comment section down below. Did you like it? Did you not? Until next time, my name is Jett from MDK. Congratulations to Kevin Harvick, your winner at Richmond.